segment.
Shout out segments everywhere.
I love your shout outs.
Well, I was gonna say shout out girth earlier when you said that, but I stopped myself. Though now I kind of wish I'd let it rip.
We're back,
man. We're back. Welcome to Coach 'em Up. My name's Tim Riley. I'm here, as always, with Zach.
Welcome.
And we are joined by a friend of the show. And this is your second appearance now.
Second appearance.
Big deal. Big deal.
Is this the first second time appearance we've had?
No, Dan. But it wasn't a solo show.
Yeah.
Dan was here with Jake Tora.
This is different.
okay.
This is different.
You've made
Is
it.
this pressured?
This is, I don't know about Yeah, there is. Actually, you know what? There is a lot of pressure. Yeah, don't fuck this up. Everybody, Matt Watson is here with us.
Thank you for having me on, boys.
And man, it's been a fun week so far.
Yeah, we
When did you get into town? It was Sunday.
Yeah. Blade and I got in Sunday at the same sort of time, and yeah, we dunked Monday.
Yeah, how fun was that?
It was fun. My groin is feeling it now.
You pulled your groin.
I definitely pulled, but definitely, yeah.
It's not
Yesterday
even
it was bad.
It's a full pull.
Yeah, full pull. Yeah, yes. I pulled it like 4 jumps in as well, and then
just kept going.
Oh, like
you got
I
to.
traveled.
Yeah,
to Texas.
I'm not going to not keep doing it.
Yeah, I get it.
Come off the bone.
Hospitals here.
Yeah. So
yeah, your groin it'll bounce back.
and the more I sit, the worse it gets. It's one of those. You're like,
How the triple cheeseburger, not a damn chance. How's that helped with groin recovery?
oh, that like took every emotion out of my body at that moment. It was just me and that cheeseburger.
God,
For you guys that don't know, it's a triple Wagyu cheeseburger.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing, you can only get it their way.
We were saying that like that's when you know a place is legit. Like you go in and it's like it's a burger and there's fries.
No substitutions is what you're getting.
You can have a double or you can have a triple.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it.
Yes.
And you know that it was like we read that the little scripture on the tables. It was like pro skateboarder and Michelin star guy get together and make like
Neen.
amazing.
And you're like, of course.
Neen Williams is his name. He's on the ladder app with Kelly. I've actually
We got to have him on.
I've already invited him.
Okay.
I'm already.
Is he bringing cheeseburgers?
Yeah.
Well,
we do a burger test.
That should actually. Thank you for that.
If you're coming on, you're
bringing the burgers.
Yeah.
So he owns Not a Damn Chance Cheeseburgers here in Austin, and they have a location in Chicago as well, I think.
I had this weird thing with burgers that like if the bun is separate and like soft and away from the burger, it's not a good burger. If it feels like it's one entity,
they wrap it
that's when
hard and it's
like the bun's getting soft and it's like becoming a part of the burger.
Yes.
And that's when burgers go.
Do we just want to stop this podcast and go get some burgers right now?
Tim alluded to, I'm quite the chef.
He is.
And I do smash burgers at my house. And what I do is I wrap them in like parchment paper like they would at a fast food place or whatever. And you let them sit for a little bit. And you're right, night and day difference than just assembling it, putting it on a plate. You got to wrap it.
Yeah.
It's got to hang out for a little bit.
Yeah.
Homogenize.
That's the term right there.
Wow. Speaking of big terms, inhibition. You like that segue? Guys, everyone listening and watching, our topic, well, one of the topics we wanted to discuss with Matt was inhibition and just what it is and how it shows up and where plyos play a role in that and other aspects of athleticism. So the word inhibition gets thrown around a lot. I think it can be kind of like a blanket term for different qualities or like different things that show up in the human body. So, Mr. Matt Watson, in your definition, what is inhibition and what is its role in athletics and athletic development?
Like lately I've been going, everything that we're training is to beat inhibition. Like that is sports and exercise science to a T. Like I think we all have a bandwidth that we're like, there's a percentage at the top that none of us are touching upon. Maybe Blaine is.
Yeah,
Blaine's like topping out and he's able to go there.
He reminds me of Trey Hardy. Like when you look at him. Anyway, keep going.
Exactly that. So I think we've all got that extra zone that we're inhibited to not go there. Mm-hmm. Whether it's taking time away from training, being older, being a beginner.
Yep.
Someone that lacks a an area of mobility that they can't get into. Is
coordination,
trauma.
Yeah.
There's like this stack of all these different things that create an inhibition. And it's our job as coaches to break down those inhibitions. So it's that kind of tends to be the way that I'm looking at it from like a more of a neurological standpoint.
100%.
And all of the physical qualities that we train just continue to rise. But that doesn't mean that the inhibition is broken down in certain athletes. So I often find that if there's an athlete that comes to me and he's been like, oh, I've been doing this for like 3 years and I'm hitting a plateau all the time. He's like, I'm getting stronger and I'm doing this, but I can't jump higher, or I can't sprint faster, or I can't cut. And it's like straight away, you as the coach just pick up this individual that you're like, well, I can see why. Like, you're inhibited to do this. Like, your lack of coordination is like, right now I'm inhibited to do some dunks because I don't have the coordinative capacity.
You haven't been doing it.
I haven't been doing it.
Yeah.
So there's also the role of do the thing.
Yep.
And that definitely gives you a larger bandwidth to go into to explore those areas. And I'm starting to learn more about inhibition, and it's like you can pick up on a few things, but like until you have the whole pie of like what all of these neurological responses are doing within the body, I don't think that you can sometimes really talk about it in like so it's like I'm like touching upon things and I'm like, Jesus, I need to be a brain surgeon to like really understand some of this stuff. But we learn like basic stuff like reciprocal inhibition, which is to do with like how the antagonist is going, you're not going to do that, man. Like I won't allow you to do that.
Yes.
So when you see someone that's trying to sprint fast and they come to you like, I'm not getting faster, but I'm getting stronger, or I'm getting better at this.
Yeah.
And then you see them and everything is tense.
Yeah.
That's their body saying, you're not going there, dude. We're not ready for this. So it's like, how do I unlock that as a coach? And I think a lot of it is moving away from the weight room. Like, we can do a lot to break down those inhibitions in the weight room.
Sure.
But inhibition is heavily present at speed. And we become really good protective animals when it comes to velocity.
Yep.
So you always go back to that. Like, if you fell out of a 2-story window, what's the first thing to happen? Well, the inhibition in us tells us to like, well, do not brace when you land, because everything is going to go bum, 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 and everything is going to break. So we want to completely
conform,
flex, and roll out of that movement as a parkour athlete does. And
you better at least.
That, you better, or
land stiff.
And it becomes
Pershansky stuff.
So that's where it comes in. Like the real human level to it is protect at all cost. And the first level is protect the brain, and then it's protect the vital organs, and then it's protect the tissue as like the final layer. So like, I don't care about your patella, but I really care about your head.
Yeah.
And so like, how do we as coaches put these layers on for you to be like, no, it's okay, dude. Like, we can teach you how to land or do something in a certain way that your head's protected, your organs are protected, and now your tissue's strong enough to depth jump, fall off of high heights, and not flex at the joint. So I look at it, how do I bring plyometrics or dynamic training into your world and say, what can we do to unlock those inhibitions? And I think force at velocity and gradually scaling that up is truly where I think that's the best recipe for it. And I think it's obvious. It's really hard, obviously, to measure inhibition. The only measurable is really your set of eyes. Obviously, you're going to get some data back on that, but visually is where you're going to see freedom of movement or just your ability to hit the ground harder. And I often see it in athletes where it feels like you've been kind of teetering in the same level of performance for like 3 or 4 weeks, and then they have this little step up, and you're like, oh, dude, you turned up nice today. That, to me, is that we've broken down some level of inhibition? Like, you feel more confident when you're accelerating to drive through the floor better. Now, obviously, there's multi-layers to it. Is it a skill thing? Is it...
have they adapted at the physical level?
There's all those components, but at the same time...
It's probably all inseparable to a degree.
Exactly,
though, right?
exactly. But sometimes it feels like someone takes off the training wheels and you're like,
Totally.
oh, okay. You turned up a different guy today.
Yep.
And I start to question, is that breaking some inhibition? So
Yeah. Ivan, you've got my wheels turning even in terms of just like skill acquisition and stuff. Like you look at, you know, the best athletes, like they, you know, particularly like in sport or at the event when it's happening, there's an effortlessness that's occurring. Yeah, I watched Jamar Chase this weekend catch a screen pass and literally slither between two defenders, make one cut on a dime, got a DB turned around. He was so lost, he didn't even know he was at a football game. And then he took it all the way to the house, and he did it so effortlessly. And it got me thinking about Austin Yoakum actually while you were talking, and a lot of the things that he has his athletes do that some people might look and say and be like, what the fuck are they doing? They're just screwing around. But actually what's happening is he's putting them in these complex situations where they have to problem solve, but in an environment that's like fun and exciting. And you're not really actually thinking in the moment,
no
how do I have to figure this out? You're figuring it out on the fly and solving movement problems in that way. So he's creating an environment to eliminate some of these inhibitions. Because like, a conversation that I had with him too is like, if you've never attempted the spin move or the dead leg, you know, even in a practice, you're just not going to fucking do it in a game.
No,
it's not even going to occur to you, right?
No.
And so it's like removing the barrier of the illusion that that's not an option for you. Because it could be. But you have to get exposure to it. And I think also maybe some of the best athletes, they inherently just have this like, I can do that. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Like I've noticed it. It's like when I'll tell a certain athlete, it's like, I want you to do this, this, and that. I'll show them one time and they'll nail it. Or like, I'm like, not quite, try this. And then they just fucking do the thing.
Yeah. Well, it's the type of guy that you say, oh, do you reckon you could do that? And they're like, yeah, fuck, let's do it right now. And you're like, oh, fuck's sake. It like frustrates you as the average.
Yeah. Like Blaine, for example.
Like Blaine. But like that's what separates you. Like I think that's what separates those guys.
I
think your best athletes are your quickest learners.
Yes.
With skill acquisition, even strength conditioning, anything, like your quickest athletes are going to adapt.
It doesn't even look like a learning process though. It just looks like they've already learned it, but they've never done it before.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that that also pays dividend to like a huge variety in someone athletically, like someone that can just pick up the skills and you're like, oh, okay. It's because going back to Austin Yoakum stuff, like there is so like in a 10-minute space, they've done so many slightly different moves and nuances to moves that can afford them to just go, well, I can also now do that. So,
yeah. There's definitely a confidence piece. You know where I see it? I don't want to steal your thunder here because you may be, this may be something you were going to use as an example, but actually, I don't know why I said I don't mean to because I'm going to do it anyway. I kind of lied to you. Actually.
I do mean to do that.
I am going to intentionally say that one of the ways that I see kind of what I feel like we're all talking about here is in hops, single leg hops. Because I'm working with this basketball team. In fact, I just got back from training them and I've got them for 10 weeks and it's just try and put some weight on them, get them stronger and get them as athletic as possible in that time. And we've been doing single leg hops and we've started just from like easy single leg hops to horizontal to vertical to like, a lot of vertical. Now we're single leg hopping for distance and doing all the things. And, in what's it been 7 weeks now, it's not like, that much has changed at the physical level. I mean, they're definitely getting stronger, but even then it's like, is it mostly neurological? Probably. They're just getting better at the things.
No, you're good at your job.
Thanks. Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. You're right. It is. Every single penny they paid, I was worth. I've seen this transformation happen across the entire team because kids couldn't do single leg hops at all. It was, especially some of the freshmen, it's just dog shit. Yeah. Hard to watch.
Oh, yeah.
But something clicked in this past week where it was like what you were describing, a light switch. And some of the guys, the more coordinated guys who multi-sport athletes, some of the older guys were getting it before, but it was almost like this wave washed over the team over the course of like 3 to 4 training sessions where it was like, oh, they're doing it. And they're doing it right. And I can't help but think it's just like, what is the why there? You know what I mean? It's like, okay, exposure, specificity, all that stuff. But if you've done a single leg hop, the first time you've ever tried it, it feels like a car crash. That's what that's the information you're receiving.
Yeah.
And even a hop that's done low velocity, not very high, that's how it feels. It's like, fuck, I'm not prepared.
The ground's constantly coming at you, right?
Jesus, too quickly.
And it
You're
feels
not
like
hitting
it's
the ground. The ground's hitting you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's you said it better than I could have. Yeah.
Exactly.
And I can't help but wonder if now they're arriving at this place where it's just no longer feeling, or they're not perceiving it to be that way.
Yeah.
So a layer of inhibition is being removed in that regard.
Yeah, they've not got to pick their leg up off the floor. They're able to actually drive the leg into the floor.
Right.
So they're like creating space away from the ground rather than being
Instead
like,
of just receiving it
get
and
your foot
picking
off
their
and then
knee
be
up.
like, oh, it's there again. It's like, I look at it in like all these layers of like how quickly you now understand that the floor's coming at you fast. Like your brain's going, you better be ready, dude. So there's so much more with like muscle stiffness that's happening. Like create stiffness faster, because last time you did it, we were in the landing and you're then starting to think about creating stiffness. So there's like so many layers to that. And it still, I think, relates back to inhibition, because doing that before, you'd have been like, holy shit, that's pulling a lot on my Achilles or my patella. So there's multi-layers to that as well. It's like, if I hit the ground hard, I know that my body has to do X, Y, and Z, but also it puts this strain on certain parts of the body that I don't know if I'm going to like that. So there's that. There's like perception of the rate of which you're going to hit the ground too. That's a big thing. And it's like you say, it's collision after collision after collision, because you have this need to put your foot in the ground, because if you don't, you're just going to fall over. And yeah, you will see that. Like people were like, I've been like doing hops for like 3 or 4 weeks, and I'm like, just wait, because you'll tell me.
Don't stop before the miracle happens, baby.
You're going to tell me in 3 or 4 weeks time, you're like, something clicked.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have another, maybe it's a longer period after that. You maybe have a 6 or 7 week period, and then it will click again, and then you'll be able to like hop for distance with ease. And I say this, like realistically, if I'm training a guy, you turn that into months, and that becomes like 7 months in, this guy is like, oh shit, yeah, I can hop now. But we're talking in short time frames. It still does happen at like a micro level. So I think that it is a movement that everyone should do to understand how quickly you can win with it and how quickly you can lose with it. I put up a post yesterday saying, these things happen within like a 10-day period if you don't hop. Like things are going to fall off the wagon quickly. Exactly the same like speed does.
Well, you remember, I was hopping. I was a hopping motherfucker for a long time, and then I just stopped for whatever reason. I forget what.
You just put something else in your training.
I was just, how anyone listening to this, anyone listening to this, I never made my athletes stop doing it, but like you do something for a long time, it gets great results, and then like for whatever reason, you kind of just it falls out of the program, and then
like it'll stay in the bag. It's fine.
Yeah,
you
wrong.
Revisited it.
Wrong. Yes, especially at this age. Yeah.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
With time, forget about it.
Yeah.
Like,
it's the from the amount of time it takes for something falling out of the program and then getting it back to where it was, if you ever do, Yeah.
It's very much the same as speed though. Like just going back to those points, they say around a 10 to 14 day period is when you'll start to lose speed qualities. And you'll feel that inherently. If you've ever you're training or doing a lot of speed training at the moment. If you didn't have a couple of weeks of speed stuff, automatically you'd be like, I can't get my foot off the ground fast enough, or it feels like everything's like coming at me faster rather than me being able to run across the ground rather than the other way. So hopping's the same. And it's also why hopping can be a real good thing to put in there if you can't do speed work.
Yeah. Because at least you're interacting
you're interacting with
especially
the
lower leg, where there's
look at
speed and timing, and you have to attack the floor.
Exactly.
Or
if you look at a hop, it's like cyclical in nature, just like
there's a frequency element.
Ideally, If you look at Matt's videos, you should do it like that.
It becomes the stride frequency element comes in, right? And that's a big thing. That's like the that's what a lot of people are inhibited by when it comes to speed, is that frequency.
Yeah.
Everyone can get to a stage where they can create a greater stride length, or they could potentially start to reduce ground contact, but to do it at the frequency, look at world-class sprinters are doing it more than 4 times a second.
Jesus.
Like, you have to let the wheels off there.
Yeah, you do.
You got to be able to spin.
Yeah.
There's no way. So
It's reflexive. It's not.
So if you've got inhibition, forget about it. Forget about it. So that's why hopping is so good in that as well. Like, it becomes, although it's a hard thing to teach, if I have an athlete that's doing a little bit of speed work and it's hard for me to break down certain inhibitions, like, hopping is great for that. It's like, okay, we're going to try to take you past that kind of sensation where, like, I don't want to continually whip my leg into the ground. Hopping can be perfect for it.
Yeah, I think those high velocity movements like jumping, sprinting, like anything high velocity, I feel like if you quit doing it, you lose your adaptation to it way quicker than like on the force aspect.
For sure.
So like strength, you have to hit it every like 21 to 35 days, whatever, to keep pretty much good strength. And sprinting and hopping, if you get rid of that, it's like 8 to 12 days, something like that, which is, to your point, like, you need to keep it in your program all the time.
Yeah. Well, and you don't have to murder yourself with it. There's like that assumption. Like, you could go out there, like right now you'd be like, right, I've got to go get some hopping in. You could do a couple sets. Just open your eyes to a couple hops. Like, hit the ground hard. Cool, I'm done. It doesn't have to be set after set after set. There's such that assumption. It's the same with speed stuff. Like,
I do 3 sets of 5 on one leg, single leg hops. I'm good.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly it. And it could be the same for speed stuff. I think you could get probably in and around 7 or 8 accelerations, and you could do like 4 or 5 flying 10s. And you would keep qualities. You know, whether you want to build on that, obviously it becomes a whole different thing. But if it's in season, it's a big thing. People saying to me, oh, should I be keeping plyometrics in season? And I'm like, well, if you have an opportunity in the week where you're like, I could get some landings in, or I could get some speed stuff in, just dose that in there.
I think that's my most asked question of when in-season training starts, should I take out jumping, plyos, or sprinting? And if you look at it, like to your point, 3 sets of 5, like 10 to 15 contacts is not going to make or break your practice or your game.
It's crazy,
and if it does, you didn't prepare for the season.
100%.
That's exactly the point there.
Yeah.
That's what gets to me. It's like, but how am I going to handle the volume and load when I'm in season? And I'm like, well, you prepare for it.
You had an off season.
What was your off season?
You have an off season, right? If you want to do 10 to 15 hops in a session, maybe twice a week, if you did 70 or 80 of them off season, you're probably all right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Like, that starts to feel, it's like strength work. If you're getting a good volume of that stuff in, and you're worried about like in-season soreness, if you haven't prepared for it, you're going to be fucking sore.
Right.
And it's going to be the same with a neuromuscular hit. And I just don't think, like basketball, for example, I get it a lot. There's so much jumping in basketball. And I'm like, dude, there's no hopping in basketball.
Not really, though. There's not. Like,
exactly.
And many times you go for a heavy, like, dunk or whatever, it's only a few times.
It's more it's a lot of sub-max.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and if anything, it is, I've said this so many times, it is the most economical forms of sub-max jumping as well.
Totally.
So everything might be softer, easier, better for me to position myself. It's not actually comparable even to sub-max plyos that you'd be doing.
Yeah.
Where you have to see it that the training environment is where we specifically focus on the quality of how you're going to do stuff, even if it's sub-maximal. There's no focus of quality, it's on economy in the game. Because I want to be on the court for over 40 minutes.
Right.
Can't be taking.
I'm not hitting the ground, bro, every time. Like, did you see that landing?
Right.
Whilst the guy blows by me. Like,
right. Exactly.
So that's just so different, so starkly different. So it's about, how do I hit that neuromuscular stimulus in a way that I'm prepared for it and I can continually use it throughout the season.
The Coach 'em Up podcast is sponsored by Squat Wedgies. Tim, what are Squat Wedgies?
Squat wedgies are an adjustable squat wedge, 7, 13, and 20 degrees.
It's big enough to elevate your whole foot and not just your heel.
Because it's rubber, it doesn't slide on surfaces.
It's 22 pounds, so it's durable and stable enough for even your biggest athletes.
There's a 90-day risk-free trial. The shipping is free, and
get 15% off Squat Wedgies with our discount code CoachEmUp15.
Coach 'em Up 15 for 15% off of the best squat wedge on the planet. I just got my new watch from Amazfit. It's called the T-Rex 3. And this is the best watch I've ever had in my life.
This is a $1,000 watch. Getting it $279, which is ridiculous.
Which is
value.
absurd. It just looks good, dude. Military grade stainless steel, AI voice control, water resistant up to 100 meters. It tracks your heart rate. It has maps.
Battery life, dude. Once every 27 days.
Yep.
That's incredible.
The selection that I have for my watch faces, my heart rate, how many steps I've taken.
The UV index.
UV index is important for your boy. I use my watch as a stopwatch all the time. As if all that wasn't good enough, you get a discount because you're listening and watching us. 15%, dude. Amazfit.com/coachemup, or you can click the link below. 15% off. The best watch on the planet. Now, back to the episode.
So with preparation, we're talking about off season. I think a lot of people, their first week, they watch one of your courses or whatever, and then they come out and do a million plyos their first session, and their shit's broke after that. How do you keep track of like day one off season? Do you keep track of contacts, sub max jump versus max jumps? Like how do you go about, periodizing that throughout the summer?
So it will, I give the option, you can count landings or you can count distances that you travel. The distance that you travel is going to be harder to monitor because you've got to know that 10 yards of 2 foot movements is going to be far more volume than if I bound 3 times. You cover 10 yards.
Totally.
So the landings tend to be the way to go about it. But it will be, if we're starting off early, like I just have my tiered system. If it's extensive, if it's sub-maximal, and if it's intensive, it's going to be far more extensive stuff to start with, and that depends on how you want to fit it in. I've got certain guys that are like, I've got one opportunity a week, so I'm like, cool, but we're going to hurt you on that one day. And that's just going to be the way that it goes
tomorrow.
about it. You're going to rest tomorrow, and that's just how it goes down. I've got other guys that want to do it every single day of the week.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do I figure out that problem? So I just might swing it up and down and undulate.
Do you have
how
a
I attack
preference?
that.
Like all things equal, a guy's got a blank slate.
Yeah.
What's the frequency looking like?
I like that.
3 or 4 is days a week
ideal.
Is ideal. 3, I think, is ideal for team sports guys.
Yeah.
For court sport guys, less is usually more because they just want to live on the court. And I'm like, your lower legs are just going to be saturated with fatigue. In comparison to a track guy that I can manipulate a lot of his other training elements.
You know exactly what they're doing.
I know exactly what he's doing, and I can almost count how many landings he's doing and all the speed work that he does.
Right.
And all
It's much more easy to quantify. Correct.
Exactly. So, and it depends how precious they are with what other things they do. So if I can say, well, this is a workout that you're doing in the gym and you have a bit of space to do some bilateral work, then I'm going to creep in some bilateral stuff. If they
Shout out creeps.
Creeps everywhere.
And are they precious about their warm-ups? Like, have I got a guy that wants to warm up for 30 minutes, or I've got a guy that literally
5
turns
minutes.
up and I'm like, in, go. If I've got a guy that wants to spend more time, then I'm gonna drip feed bits in there. So it very much becomes I have my light, medium, and intense volumes for the week. And I will then split those volumes as well. If I'm doing like individual programming for someone, for bilateral and unilateral. And I can then, it's not necessarily about like, how do I change this week on week on week? It's more to do with how I can look back at what that volume did to that individual. So they tell me 2 days later, they're like, I am absolutely dead from that session that we did a couple of days ago. My basketball practice has been piss poor because of it. I go, well, we did do a lot of hopping in that session.
Yeah.
And we did it at we did high volume of sub-maximal stuff. So is that appropriate for the next week? Probably not. So I'm going to change that. I'm going to bring in more bilateral stuff, or I'm just going to reduce that volume. Does it still affect you. Cool. If it is that you've had basketball practice the day before and then we only have an opportunity to do plyos then, it's like, does that work well? Can I do that? And if not, then I just have that capacity then to move things around. And I found that's been the best way for me to track things. Overall volume is tough because you could be doing 500 rudimentary landings in a week and 20 intense. And that looks a lot different if you flip it and you have 200 intense landings and 150.
I think to your point, the best thing is like communicating with that athlete of like, how did you feel? Because I especially know like sometimes you'll push it a little harder on a certain day.
Yep.
And if the next day they come back and everyone's complaining about their knees, lower back, or feet, I know I probably did a little too much, but some of these younger athletes, you could throw the kitchen sink at them the next day. They're like, I feel bouncy actually.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, all right, we can add some more, I guess.
Exactly. So you can add some more, or you can change the intensity of that, or you can bring in more intense movement patterns. So can I do more unilateral stuff here, which might be preferable? And I just look at it like this. I'm like, I'll have a barometer of, it's okay for you to come in on a Wednesday after Tuesday's session with high lower leg fatigue, because we're going to do static lifting on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. But if you're doing, let's say you're using a lot of my deep tier movements and you come in and your glutes and hips and quads are just fried, then it's not going to be conducive for me to then lift you the next day.
Totally.
Some people I'm pretty mean and I will do that.
You just stack those days together, like the deep tier stuff with your big lower body strength movements, or how do you do that? Yeah.
Again,
That's what I do.
Yeah,
again,
me too.
I'll
do the deep tier stuff I'll get all my lifts out the way and do the deep tier at the end.
Wow, you dirty dog.
Oh yeah, I'll do this.
I think they're great for like warm up and to your point, like at the end.
Yeah.
Like if you don't feel good after that.
Well, this is the thing as well. So it's either again, like the few years that I've been like really pushing for people to use my system is like consistently learning that I can do it in any way I possibly want, which is really powerful because I always only thought it was one way.
Can you talk about that? Just sort of like the evolution of...
Yeah, it's crazy because how I inherited it as a track athlete, the deep tier was always used as the therapeutic stuff after a really stiff session.
I'll be damned.
So as high jumpers, our deep tier stuff was in the high jump bed.
Yeah, they jump in the...
You spend like 4 weeks on the floor. And if you've ever felt like pump,
that is...
Especially in that
softest
bed.
of softest.
My God.
Right?
I got that sand pit out there, dude. I'm going to take those football players out there.
So once they've done, like, do a speed session with them or do hard plyos.
Yep.
And then just bring that all down.
Yeah.
And go and chase like a blood pump.
Yep.
And you can throw the research book at me, whatever. But knees and Achilles always feel a lot better after we do we called it super soft deep tier.
Okay.
And that was always the thing that we went to. So we would high jump and then my coach Eric would be like, right, everyone get in the pit. And you're like,
fuck me.
It's kind of like BFR in a way.
Kind of like it.
Juices
Exactly.
Up your tendons. And,
Exactly. And also there was we chased a little bit of a metabolic stimulus there as well.
Yeah. Well, you're getting length, you're getting blood flow, you're getting a pump. I mean, you're getting a pump, dude.
You're getting a pump. So that was always the way that we used deep tier, especially in season. That was a big thing. Now out of season, we use like in the early off season, we did a lot of deep tier on grass, a lot. So like right now, so what are we, early October? So September through to the middle of October, we would be on that grass and we'd be doing, I mean, I talk about the volume that I'll have some athletes do now. Bro, we were doing 4 times the volume of it. People are like, how many landings did you do in a week as a high jumper? Like we did like 1,200 in a session. In a session. We would do 100 meter bounds.
100 meter bounds.
And we would do
my hamstrings would literally quit.
We would do 4 sets of it. It was on grass.
Yeah.
It was on grass, but it's the same. Did you see the post that I put up with the Olympic weightlifter that did 800 meters of bilateral frog leaps around a track?
Yes, I did see that.
Crazy.
He took a couple of weeks off lifting and then set a PR in his back squat. He had 8 days of DOMs. after 800, like
Don't do that at home.
Yeah. We're not
Yeah.
advocating for that. Is this what we mean by the true shock method?
So like,
Man.
so that's kind of how we used it, and it developed into well, my mentor Eric had worked. He worked with like Toronto Raptors. Done a little bit with quite a few different team sports, but basketball was the main thing.
Yeah.
But I never got the insight into how he manipulated the tiers with those players. I only ever got the track stuff. So like when I really started to work with team sports athletes, probably talking 2016, it was like, well, I can put that there, and I can put that there, and I can put that there, and that kind of fits. And then I would change it up, and I'd be like, oh, that didn't work for you. And it just become this thing where it's like, I have certain guys that will deep tier before they squat, and they're like, I've never felt better,
great.
just bouncing out the bottom of that.
Yeah.
At the end of a lift,
Yep.
I've got some guys that want to use it before they accelerate. They feel
I've been doing that on the, sorry to interrupt.
No.
Before track days, it's the last thing I do before I start getting into my accelerations.
Yeah.
Just to get like, I've got a lot of distance between my thighs.
Just to
I'm
feel
spending
length.
time there. I'm getting
feel
length
length.
there. It's almost like a dynamic stretch, but I'm kind of getting things going.
Yeah. I had a funny moment with so at the facility that I'd done a bit of work with in Orange County. NFL pro comes in. He's like, oh, real tight hips. I'm like, just try this. And we just oscillated in a split stance. And then I catch a video of him getting ready for the Super Bowl in the warm up, doing split stance.
Let's go.
I'm like, someone else invented this movement, but it's fine. I showed that guy that movement.
That's right.
And
That's
but like,
right.
he wouldn't warm up without doing that then. Because he's like, the length that I feel getting that rather than just doing like a basic like
hip flexor stretch.
static or hip flexor stretch
like
or whatever.
walking quad stretch.
So exactly. So it becomes like how can you use it? Like the deep tier is as vast as you want to use it. It can be like a mobility thing, but it could also be something that you use before accelerations and you're doing repeat broad jumps and like rolling through the foot and in real deep joint angles. So it can be super explosive and it can be super easy. So yeah, the tiers have really just been my constraint, but also my, like people are like, oh, do you not do other things within that? And I'm like, of course I do, bro. Like, of course I depth jump kids. Of course I do this. Of course I do that.
Nope, that's all I do.
But it also gives people a little framework to be able to just put it where they want.
I feel like a lot of the questions you get are just people not being willing to experiment.
Absolutely, Tim. How many
That's
people
what
have
it
asked you
boils
questions
down to.
about haven't done a deep tiered hop or leap or whatever? Like, what?
It's like, well, how many contacts should I do every? What is it? It's like, well, just fucking go
Have you
try
tried?
it. You know, you've got a framework.
Do you know, Mike Boyle got some shit yesterday on Twitter because
let's go.
Someone put the, as a coach, do you feel like you should be able to do movements before you can coach it? And I am someone that I grew up as a high jumper where I knew a female coach that had never high jumped in her life, but coached national champions.
Wow.
So that's cool, right?
Yeah.
Very.
But also, there's a lot of morons, and those morons have never done almost anything dynamic.
Yes.
So I'm like, just do it.
Yeah. Do it.
What would
try
happen
it.
if I gave my athletes these hops? I'm like, well, if you try, it doesn't matter if you get hurt because you're not the athlete anymore.
Right. Yeah. Who
And
gives
you
a
should know
shit
what the
about you
stimulus-
fucking fuck your groin?
Well, you should know what the stimulus feels like.
Yeah.
If you're gonna make an
Exactly.
athlete do something, I should know. Like,
Exactly.
Oh, it
okay.
took me 4 days to recover from
Yeah,
that.
probably shouldn't do it again.
Yeah.
This is the example. It's like the FDA giving doctors something and saying, here's a drug that we've never tested,
Right.
but we think it would be good for diabetes.
Right.
And you're now going to give it to everyone.
Right.
And you're going to find out.
This
you're gonna
guy told
if
me
it
it's
works
going to
or
be
not.
good.
you're
Trust
gonna
me. A
fuck
smart
about and find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Now, like that's how you're gauging things.
Yeah. And like I think too, so it's like I'm a big, I like, and I'm so biased here. So, but
hear it.
I'm a walk the walk
Yeah.
guy.
I agree.
I fucking love training. So if there's something that I'm giving my athletes, I've definitely one mistake I learned early on though is to not equate how I respond to a stimulus or how I recover and project that onto how they're.
That's me to a T.
So, but I've got bad news for people listening. That also means that just because you did it, you still don't have enough information. You have to fucking give it to athletes and see what happens.
You have to.
And, be conservative and, all the blah, 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 be responsible. But like there is, even within the context of something that's so well organized, like your tiered system, that's incredibly thought out, that's got a lot of, evidence and practical experience that like, hey, this is probably a practical way to go about things. At the end of the day, you got to roll up your sleeves and you got to find out for yourself where it fits into your training philosophy, the athletes you're working with on a global and individual level.
Exactly.
You got to figure it out.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm the same as you, exactly the same as you when it comes to, like, I am dreadful at recovering. My body has never been, like, I'm the lion. I fight and then I recover for a long period of time, and then I hunt and fight and then recover. Like, as an athlete, it was like 4 days of training a week. Like, if I'm training Monday, don't talk to me Tuesday.
Got it.
I was that kind of, and I assumed that everyone was like that. And then I had a kid that I'd throw the kitchen sink in one day and he'd come in like this, and I'm like, you motherfucker.
Right.
Why do you look like that?
Yeah.
Like, you should be. So, like, again, the space within your head and how you feel is not enough.
Yeah.
It has to. And ultimately, that's why, like, my bias towards my tiered system is so powerful, in that it's okay because you can give the most basics of basic level.
Yeah.
And that it eventually can become that.
Yeah.
And then you straight away find out that, oh, this athlete that I work with is pretty talented, and actually they can handle far more than what I assume.
Yeah.
Just understand that the more dynamic the movement becomes, the more variability of how people will be affected by it. I kind of look at it like that. Like, static stuff, everyone's going to experience probably the similar.
That's really good.
A similar kind of stimulus and a way of feeling.
Yeah.
Like, I squat and my ass and my quads were sore.
Yep.
And I was flat the next day. With a plyometric, I can have a muscular guy, or I can have like a super twitchy guy, and the twitchy guy is bouncing in the room the next day, and I'm like, why? But the muscular guy is the opposite, and he's like sapped and drained of energy. Exactly. So
relatable.
So it becomes like you just have to understand that you also need to look at your athletes and say, this guy's probably going to feel different to this guy. So it's okay to be slightly different in how you prescribe the volume.
Zach, guess what?
Dude, tell me.
We have partnered with Atlantis Strength. Atlantis Strength is by far the best machine equipment I have ever used. From high school, collegiate, and pro athletes, machines are underutilized. What Atlantis has done in terms of the build quality and reliability of these machines has made it effortless for me to be able to transition athletes where their output and intents can be as high as possible. You can learn more about Atlantis Strength on their website and their Instagram page. Type in Atlantis Strength. I'm such a huge fan, and we're incredibly grateful. Coach 'em Up is proud to be sponsored by Plyomat. Plyomat is a jump mat that measures ground contact times, vertical jump height, and reactive strength index.
Plyomat's trusted by over 750 coaches in 25 different countries.
It's something that you can use in training day in and day out to give immediate feedback and drive output and intent.
Plyomat's always in stock. When you order your Plyomat, you can get it within 1 to 3 business days and start your training immediately.
If you get a group of athletes challenging each other to jump higher, get off the ground quicker, it transforms that workout into a highly competitive, highly potent stimulus.
If you would like access to the best jump mat on the planet, use Coach 'em Up 5 to get 5% off at checkout.
Again, code CoachEmUp5 for 5% off. Come jump with us, get a Plyomat. You touched on something regarding like a more muscular athlete, a more elastic athlete. Where does inhibition show up with those two particular sets of athletes?
It normally shows up in the way that they produce force.
Yeah.
And the time frame that they want to produce force in. So the muscular driven guy is going to be someone that carries so much more tension, and that antagonist is fighting a lot more to hang on to what we're doing. Like, come on, brother, I'm with you.
We got
whereas the elastic guy,
or maybe it's like shit.
Yeah, exactly. And skipping in the park is the elastic guy.
Like, little Johnny, you sure you want to do this sort of thing? So you're going to get a lot more tension in those guys. So it's about. So that's why like sub-maximal methods are super valuable. It's just so valuable for more muscular driven guys. Often the way that it's perceived in the industry, you get a big Will Rattel, and it's like send it. Everything's sent to the moon.
Yeah.
And it's great, but also Will spent a lot of time breaking down those inhibitions.
Yeah.
So if you are
let's be clear, you're not Will Rattel.
He's a tendon guy with a bunch of muscle.
With a bunch of muscle.
Yeah. Let's not get that twisted. He's a tendon guy with a bunch of muscle.
Exactly. So if you are a force dominant guy and you think that everything that you need to do is to feel like you're sending it, it's often the opposite.
Yeah.
And you just see how much of a performance plateau they hit. You're just not going to break through that until you can kind of let that residual tension come away from you. And it tends to be quite the opposite sometimes for the elastic guys. Like as soon as you get all the twitchier guys with fascial,
I know.
Throw those terms up, whatever.
Yeah.
I find that it tends to be that the more time they spend on the foot, the more inhibited they are through, like they don't want to take something through a range of motion and apply force through that range of motion.
Sure.
So they'll want to bound and they'll want to hop and they'll want to eat ground up. Mm-hmm. But as soon as you bring it in to slower movements,
miserable.
So the deep tier often, like I'll get like a couple of high jumpers that are like super bouncy guys.
Yeah.
And I'll give them deep tier and they are like, what the hell did you do to me the next day? Like the muscular soreness is through the roof. So that's kind of how I'll look at it. Mm-hmm. How I'll go about training the elastic guy in comparison to the muscular guy. I tend to be with the elastic guy. I like to give them what they like.
Yeah.
But just feed them a little bit of what they don't like.
I was just about to ask you that question.
Whereas the muscular driven guy, I like to feed them a lot of what they don't like. Because it's so easy for you to, it takes so much longer to reduce the time in which you're applying force in comparison to someone can get strong and they can get better at the force end.
Yep.
But it's also a superpower that the muscular guy doesn't necessarily have.
And there's the only thing that is going to bring that up for them is time and exposure.
It's time and exposure. Exactly. So I like to give the elastic guy a lot of like body armor. Safety, because as soon as they get into those deeper, slower motions, they're like, "Oh shit, my knee's blowing up because I'm doing that." So I like to bubble wrap them a little bit and just say, "Cool, you're safe to express your superpower."
Yeah.
But the other side is just, I just can't be fast. So it's like, how do I become fast? And it's that assumption. It's like push harder for longer and further, and it's not always the case.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of how I attack it.
So inhibition, we talked earlier. One of the big, I guess, subcategories of people that are affected by it are injured athletes. Mm-hmm. So what do you think is the biggest hurdle to get over with those type of athletes when they're returning from like an ACL or an Achilles or something like that?
Yeah. Again, the first layer of that is taking that tissue through a certain range of motion at a specific velocity.
Yeah.
And our job as the coach, in my opinion, is to kind of open those doors of velocity at certain ranges.
Yep.
Right. It is to say, cool, you're safe now. And you've displayed to me that you can do that at that velocity. You can take that Achilles through that speed and through that length. Obviously, when someone comes to you with a major trauma like that, they've had a Achilles rupture, ACL tear, it is the case that they don't want to get into those ranges. Obviously, you could talk about surgical components that are coming in with the scars, maybe it is just that the tissue is now at a different length. But once we get past that from like a basic physical therapy standpoint, it often is, everything is so protective still around that because of the emotional trauma
that's what I think
displayed.
The biggest point is, like, I don't think people realize how big of a trauma that is to your body, that something tore and you went to surgery, they opened it, like your body like keeps score. Well, I think we just look at it as like, oh, it's fixed now, you got to wait your time and then you're good. But it's this piece in the back of your head. So like, can't do that again.
I think the best example of this, I've spoken about it before, is an ankle roll. Mm-hmm. And an ankle, someone rolls their ankle, basketball team, let's say. We give 6 to 8 weeks as the like very typical physical tissue development stage. Now, what's left behind is the neuromuscular development stage. And inhibition is heavily related into that. But I think past that physical development, how to land on that foot and how to feel safe on that foot again is almost it's like, here's your 6 to 8 weeks, and now here's your 6 to 8 weeks past that. And it's been one of the, and you know, the physical side can be developed obviously a lot faster than that if you are aggressive with it. And it's why I'm bringing in like learning how to land really early. And that's the same with, I dealt with in 2022, 2023, I dealt with 2 Achilles ruptures. And I had a guy that was able to do light forms of plyometrics after an Achilles rupture in 13 weeks.
Whoa.
Dang.
And it's like, obviously, like, how high is the landing? Well, the landing is, you know, it's a
centimeter.
But
it's happening.
But what's different is when you have a landing and you are leaving the ground and gravity does its job of pulling you back down into it, it is putting that tissue through length at speed. And it's opening those doors again to that.
Yeah.
And the quicker we can do that, going back to the ankle roll stuff, it's like, how can I build a larger bandwidth of you being able to land in 1,000 different positions now and remapping what's happened? And I see that as like, I talk about it like you've got like a highway junction from your brain to your ankle. And once you've done that ankle roll, and I think the biggest affecting factor is the stress on the ligament there and the strain on that.
Yeah, for sure.
And what then happens is we go back to improving the physical part, but we've broken that highway connection of how many hundreds of thousands of landings have we done? So I've now got a job to remap that.
Yeah.
Do I know where my foot is spatially? Proprioceptively, do I understand that if I'm falling slightly back from a ball that's over the top of my head and I want to catch it from a rebound, can I put my foot out back behind me?
Yeah.
Because that's normally how re-rolls happen, is you've not learned how to land again. So the inhibition stuff with ACLs or Achilles tears is I look at it where, how can I use speed gradually in the system? Now, obviously we're gonna improve it strength-wise, whatever. We're gonna put that joint through strength protocols, but also introduce velocity at a faster speed than what a lot of other people are probably doing. So like I use a lot of deep tier oscillatory movements very early, super early. And I say, right, where's our bandwidth of where you're in discomfort, but not pain? Like I'm not really that happy here. I oscillate and I collect hundreds and thousands of landings in that range.
Yeah.
Because when you come out of that, you're like, oh, that feels great now to get into that range of motion. Because I'm just so scared to sit within this bandwidth of space that my Achilles feels vulnerable or my ACL feels vulnerable in. So for me, it's about collecting time and reps in those ranges that you don't like. And over time, increasing the velocity into those ranges that you don't like.
It's kind of like jumping off a high dive. First time you ever jump off a high dive, you're scared for your life.
Yeah.
You do it again and again by your third summer or whatever. You're doing backflips. And dives.
Exactly. You are just taking away that feeling of being like, because that's what you get. You get an injured athlete and everything is fucking tight on them.
Yeah.
They have no ability to relax because they know that, well, shit, if I'm too relaxed and I get into that position that I was uncomfortable with before.
You got to be on watch.
I've got to be on watch. And it goes back to that humanistic level of my ACL is not there now to protect me from hurting my brain, from hurting my vital organs, and the tissue still being the third layer, I think. So yeah, my knee's not able to do that, or my Achilles is presently not there to do that, right? So so you have to, like, not enough people think about the emotional response to what's happening with that.
Yeah.
And so, like, go back to that. Like, can you imagine, it's obviously happening subconsciously, but can you imagine dealing with someone that was in fear of falling over and smashing their head on the ground? Because that's what you have to deal with on the first level of trauma when someone comes back to you, in my opinion. So when you expect them to, right, we're going to do this thing with you after an ACL surgery, and they just don't want to do it, I think that, okay, well, why is that? Okay, cool. Well, let's figure out where that bandwidth of space is. Let's say it's just in a squat. Where is that space? Where do you feel vulnerability? Well, I'm just going to go like a couple of inches above it, and we might work within that space.
Yeah.
Where do you feel comfort? And emotional regulation then comes in of like, I'm safe here.
Yep.
And you know, as the coach as well, the physical development is there. Let's say the quad development is just it's just atrophied hugely, but you know that you've got them back to a stage where you've done plenty of work on the quad where you're like, girth is there, so strength potentially is getting there. How can I then get them into that comfort level and to live within that little bandwidth of space that they're not that comfortable with? And I just use pain as a regulator. If it hurts, then I'm probably not going to continue to put you through it.
I think it's the biggest thing I took away from rehab is pain be your guidance of like, especially pain during it, but then the next day.
Exactly.
If you feel fine the next day, you're probably
especially
good.
tendons. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know,
emotional's different.
You know, he does, while you're talking, I couldn't help but think it's like, you know, I was having jumper's knee pain, just horrendous for years. And I started working with David Gray, and like the first thing he got me doing was like actually bending my knee. I didn't even realize how much I was avoiding bending my knee and accessing. I just wasn't doing it.
Yeah.
You know?
And you're like, how would you get the knee strong if you don't bend the
You got to bend the motherfucker, you know? You got to load the sucker, in the words of Jake Tora.
That's a Jake Tora.
But it's the truth. And then I think what you're talking about too is just like having some, you know, what you would think is common sense surrounding like find a range that we can work in, get a lot of time and exposure there because it's just like anything else, you know.
It's
Man, what a solid inhibition
Really good.
talk.
Yeah.
Really. All right. Do we need to get into segments now?
Let's do it.
I'll start.
Get
Sure.
segmented.
My computer died, so I'm gonna use
segmented.
that. Get segmented. Shout out segments everywhere.
I love your shout out.
Well, I was gonna say shout out girth earlier when you said that. But I stopped myself. Though now I kind of wish I'd let it rip.
We're back.
And we're back. Yeah. So shout out girth. All right. You've done some of these segments before, but I have.
They sound like they've improved over time.
Every episode.
Here's a guy who's been listening to the show. That's how friend of the show for real. Shout out Matt.
Shout out this show.
Shout out, yeah.
Because this show.
By the way, before we get into the segments, I love the show. It is like what I love is, I mean, personality is the biggest thing that I think is just transforming the show, is just what you guys bring to it, and then your knowledge to then hound these people with good questions is.
Thank you.
You're doing a great job. So,
well, you know what, Zach and I talk
just
about
curious
that.
creatures.
We're curious, and also, you know, part of developing charisma and having somewhat of a personality is just not being good looking growing up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Zach and I talk
funny.
about. So we both reflect on how horrible and rough middle school and most of high school was for us. But
Yeah, being short to that? Jeez.
shout out your
But it
people.
forces you to develop a personality. So shout out being late bloomers.
Yeah. Using humor as your protective mechanism.
Yes, yes. No, it's everything's funny. I'm fine. Everything's okay. I'm not crying later. Okay.
Shout out to crying later.
Shout out to crying after the show. This segment is called 3 Things. It's brought to you by Squat Wedgies. Use code CoachEmUp15 to save 15% off the best damn squat wedges on the planet. 3 things, Mr. Matt Watson, that someone can, let's say you just got a blank slate athlete and you want to give them 3 things to help improve athletic qualities and remove inhibition for them to be their most athletic selves.
Nice.
What are 3 exercises
Oh, okay.
that check those boxes for you?
Well, hopping is number 1.
Yeah.
Always. I think acceleration work is number 2.
Nice.
They're closely, very heavily related, those both. Like being able to hit the ground at speed
Yeah.
and learning how to do that actually where your center of mass is in front of you rather than wanting to stand up quickly. I think those 2 are big things. I think the third one, I think from a beginner standpoint, is finding a movement that you feel you can, like in the gym, I'll take it away from dynamic movement, but finding a movement in the gym where you feel most comfortable putting as much force as you possibly can through that movement. So like, don't be pigeonholed into you should back squat or you should pull. Like me as an athlete, I hate pulling movements. I've got long back. My legs are like my torso is a lot longer than it should be in comparison to my legs. So I would prefer to squat or push. So if that is something that I think that not enough people do that. It's like you're pigeonholed into, you have to squat, you have to pull, you have to do this. Yep. Why can't it be just get on the fucking leg press and go hell for leather?
Yeah. That's the most British thing you've said.
Hell for leather.
On the show today. That was awesome. I've never heard that before. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I think there's too much of that. It's like, oh, you should be getting better. And I'm like, but also I think that there should be a movement in there once a week. And I have this, like a couple of athletes often ask me, I've got a track guy in Dallas, and he's like, Matt, I really like this movement when we do it. And I'm like, well, we're going to keep it in then. And that will be your one thing that you just send it.
Yeah.
Because there's too many people that are doing too many things that they're not comfortable quick enough to send.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're probably going to lift all your other lifts up by sending it on that one.
Right.
Rather than doing like a long period of just learning how to exert force in a back squat or in a pulling motion.
Uh-huh. Yep.
So yeah, I think, hopping, accelerating, and then that one that fits you to just be able to push through effectively.
Yeah. I love a good hack squat or a pendulum squat. For
type of movement that you're just stuck in.
Yeah. You're in it. There's no getting out. You really don't have to worry about getting hurt.
No.
It's globally taxing than a motherfucker, but you go full send.
What brand would you go with? If you
I would go with Atlantis Strength, who now sponsors the podcast. Let's go, baby. Woo!
This next segment is brought to you by Atlantis Strength.
That's right. Hell yeah. You might as well just do it.
Yeah, you can do that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you weren't a coach, what would you be and why?
My wife, my wife's gonna laugh at this.
A better husband.
But I kind of took the piss a little bit, like when we were moving out to Southern California, that the only reason why we were doing that is for me to get into like voiceover acting in like cartoons and stuff. I grew up a big Jim Carrey and Robin Williams fan,
dude.
And forever, like with my daughter, I mean, I won't embarrass myself and do anything on the show, but if you were around me when I'm with my daughter and we're alone, like my daughter's now real strange like I am. And there are certain parts of me where I'm like, oh, that would just be the best to just voice over act, and you're like following a script of cartoons, or not on a script, someone like Robin Williams that just goes with it and rolls with it. I mean, there's a lot of cocaine involved in that as well.
Yeah, hell yeah. Shout out cocaine. We're sober now, guys. It's good.
But yeah, I think that would be, if I could do cartoon voiceover.
I fucking love that, man. Me and my brother used to same. We grew up on
watching Liar Liar, watching The Mask, watching
The Pen is Blue.
Royal Blue. Epic, dude.
We're just of that age, I think. We grew up on it, and what's funny is like my dad hated it. He's like, this is the stupidest, and it's just because we grew up with that.
Yeah.
But like before him, he was like a big John Candy fan.
Right. Yeah.
So like it's just funny how generationally I can imagine.
Yeah, everyone that comes after you is always a moron.
Correct.
Always.
Always. I wonder if our age bracket will be the ones to be like,
no, we're funny.
Yeah.
Our age
bracket. Yeah. I think we're all right. But I'm sure everyone said that before us too.
Well, I think that the not much constraint was given to people back then, right?
Sure.
Yeah. Now it's a little constraint.
That's right.
Here.
Yep. There's some lines you need to color inside.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. Shout out to lines.
So yeah,
but not cocaine. Here we go.
Anyways, our next segment is brought to you by Plyomat, the best damn Plyomat
Big
on the planet.
Big Plyomat guys.
Shout out to the big Plyomat guys here. Coach 'em up 5 gives you 5% off at checkout.
Big deal.
Rant and rave. I want to hear something you want to rant about Plyos and how people botch them nowadays, and then some raving that you see going on with Plyo implementation now.
Yeah.
Good job, Zach. That was really good.
Plyo Rant. Plyo Rant is right now. I mean, I still can't get across to people how important hopping is. Like, I don't know how many more times I've got to tell you, motherfuckers. I don't know how many more times I have to tell you. And you know why? It's because they do not try it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
I think
or they do it once and they're like, I suck at this, and so they stop.
Therefore I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. I think maybe it's my fault. Maybe it's not my fault. I don't know. I think that the level of like rudimentary, extensive, like, and when they say extensive, it is just almost rudimentary. There's so much of like, oh, okay, done my plyos, and all you did was just do little pogo leaps on the spot, and you thought that
he said it.
Pogo leap.
He said pogos, dude.
Well, that's because that's how they call it.
Yeah,
that's what they call it.
I see. It was an insult. Got it. Okay. It was an insult.
So that there's that assumption. It's like, oh, my athleticism should be at this level, and it's like,
10 pogos
what do you
today.
expect?
Yeah.
And even high volumes of it, I still don't think that like you have to take it past. And it's still like sub-maximal is maximal, but it's just a little turn down. It's not the whole way down. And it's like where...
Yeah, you can do pogos to get blue in the face.
Yeah.
You're not going to jump higher.
You're not going to jump higher. Like you... And you still probably don't do enough volume anyway, even if you feel like you do enough volume. And yeah, there's too much of that continues to... It's like, oh, I do my plyometrics now, and they're doing it on like a lifting platform, and they get their little bit done, and that's enough. And I'm like, no, bro, you're not hitting the ground, and you're not taking your body to that extreme that you need to. So if anything, it's like reduce everything by 90% of volume, do a bit of a warm up, make sure you're ready, and then just spend 5 minutes hitting the ground as hard as you can. I can guarantee you your body will feel 1,000 times different to what it does when you do the little pogos that you do.
It's funny because I see that what you're talking about being like multifaceted, where it's like just kind of like not an understanding of what a plyometric is and what it's meant to do for you. Because if you know that it's meant to be this fucking potent thing that is going to drive adaptation in a really intense way, then you look at it differently. But I think without having some sort of exposure to having like...
Once again, you haven't done it.
You haven't done it. And then the inhibition
the intent
thing comes up again. It's like you think you think what you're doing is intense.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's not.
You're letting the ground
probably
hit
can
you.
do more.
And I mean, my point to it always is, if you can be around the most dynamic athletes on earth, go and be around them and see how people hit the ground. And if you can't do that, just go to your local track and watch people move on a track.
Yep.
Because you're like, oh, I don't hit the ground. even on just like a national level kind of athlete.
Yeah.
And then when you see world-class athletics, forget about it. You'd be like, fuck it, I'm done. Like,
I
there's no
watched
point in me.
Blaine not warm up, and I mean at all yesterday, and go right into an acceleration bound, and it was the best I've ever seen done in this building. And I just had this moment where I was like, that motherfucker.
Yeah. And he's 38, 39 in 2 weeks.
And it was so crisp and clean, and the contact, the sound his foot made against the turf, all of it.
Hey.
He didn't warm up.
We got 4 years to get to 39. We got this.
Jesus.
We got it.
Got it.
We'll chase them.
So yeah, that's I think that continues to haunt me a little bit. And it maybe it's because of how people see like the light stuff that I do and the rudimentary stuff that I do. But that for me is like just collecting a volume and also taking me into my other work. Like it gets me ready for medium or submaximal or intense movements. So yeah, that's my rant, my rave. It's been a long year.
We got nothing.
It's been a long year.
I think it's the continuation of how people are using the tiers. I think it's the variation of how people are, like they continually come back to me with like, oh, I've been using it, pairing it with this or doing it after this, and this really works well for me. So I mean, that's kind of a weird like, oh, look at my tits, but
I like it.
But you know, it like isn't nothing wrong with someone coming back to you and you being like, oh, that's something that I haven't done with it yet, and it just shows power of there's nothing wrong, guys, with having a system. You know, have some constraints. Obviously, you can go outside them, but I think that people really enjoy a system for them to be like, oh yeah, I've been using this and it really works with this.
Pat Davidson said this. State troopers get to speed on the highway. I don't know if he heard that from someone else, but I remember hearing that quote, and the explanation behind that was, it was like, when you get to know the rules so well that you can enforce them, then you can feel free to break them,
Yep.
you know,
Yep.
and explore outside of that. But having a framework, having a system, because, you know, and then, you know,
work within the rules for the first 2 years.
Figure it out.
And then
you,
do the thing, and then you can play.
Yep.
Exactly.
And also that's coaching, right? Is like, okay, I'm learning a framework.
Yep.
You got to have somewhere to start. Of course. You should, you know, have a North Star.
Yep.
And then through practical experience and genuinely being curious as to how to problem solve for the team or the individual, whatever, you start to say, oh, in this instance, I can color outside the lines here and there. And, you know,
that doesn't work for me in my situation, or this guy doesn't like that.
State troopers get the speed on the highway, guys.
I like
Like
that.
it. I like it.
Okay. We are at our last segment. This segment is called Unsolicited, Solicited Advice. This segment is brought to you by Amazfit and the T-Rex 3 watch. Look at that bad boy. It's
Beautiful.
named after a dinosaur. That's all you really need to know. But they're a wearable company. They got rings, heart rate monitors, watches. And guys, I said this on the last show, we're their second most redeemed coupon in the entire fucking company, and it's a big company. Use code COACHEMUP for 20% off site-wide. The entire website, dude.
Everything on the
Literally everything. You can buy anything 20% off, and it's all badass stuff. Okay, so unsolicited, solicited advice. And, you know, we're probably all going to go get some food after this, right? And you say, guys, I'm going to go take a piss and wash my hands. And you walk up to the urinal, and there's a gentleman next to you, and something washes over you. And you know right now, right in this moment, this guy needs to hear this. And you lean over. And by the way, you didn't, there's 3 urinals. You picked the one right next to him.
Right in the middle.
Yep. You didn't leave a space. It's a power move.
testy.
You lean over and you whisper into his ear so close that your mustache tickles his earlobe. And you say,
Just his earlobe.
oh, I mean, we can take a step further.
Earlobe.
We are in
All right,
Austin,
what's the
Texas, after
question?
all.
What's the question?
Anyway, it's getting out of hand. What is this clearly unsolicited piece of advice that you would give him? And it can be about anything, training, life, whatever.
There's definitely I don't know if Jake Tour is doing this to the industry, but like, if you want to be the guy, just start learning.
Yep.
Like right now I could go, do you know what? Forget Plyos. I'm going to be the inhibition guy. There's no one else that's going to be that.
Right.
You know, there might be a couple of people that play with it, like Jake right now. When it comes to tendons and the practical application of that, forget it. Like, Jake's already is there.
He is there.
He's the North Star now, right?
Jake is the king of the mountain. The tendon mountain.
Exactly. So I think it's quickly becoming a thing. Like, people are like, oh, like I want to, you know, make some money online. Like, if you have it in you to be interested in something that is just so consuming of you, then just roll with it. Roll with it, learn from as many people as you possibly can. And I think where real power comes into this is then your connection of people and just becoming one of the guys that, like, just having like connections like you guys. Like, I know that someone like Jake, I'm like, but patella tendon issue, go see Jake Tura.
Yep.
Like, just so become one of the boys, but also
shout out to the boys.
Shout out to the boys. But just go to town on something if you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
And I think like the plyo side of things, I don't even think that I've actually gone to town in it. Like, I think about it a lot, but I'm still not in it as much as I could be like Jake. Like, Jake picks up horse tendon books and goes and locks himself in a cabin in the woods. Like, that's when you know you're in
Next
it.
level.
Jake is a savage.
He's a savage.
You know what I mean? To be able to lock the fuck in like that. Like, on his stories, it'll be like a picture of a horse tendon book, some new research he just made, and then it's him holding a deer's heart because he's in the fucking wilderness hunting by himself, reading tendon books and carving up animals.
Yeah.
You're not built like most people are not. You're not that guy, pal.
Do you think that that's also a great lesson in business as well? Focus on one thing. Like, I'm the worst. Like, I could be doing this. I could be doing this. I could do this. I could do this.
Right.
Stop.
Yeah.
Focus on this thing.
It's funny you say that because, like, we just had someone on, and Tanner, who was like, you know, if you niche down entirely, you run the risk of getting lost and not being able to be effective in other ways.
Yeah.
But I'm saying it's like, okay, personally, like, I don't want to just be this, but inherently also there is a level where in order to be a master of something, you start to understand that you have to
be a generalist to be a.
You have to have an understanding, to a certain degree, a high level of understanding of other systems and the way things operate in order to even sniff mastery.
Otherwise, you become the researcher and not the practitioner, right? So why Jake is so good at what he does is because he spent time as a strength coach and he worked in sport and he understands that, oh, okay, this person is telling us we should just be doing isometrics. And he's like, yeah, but then what happens when we bring in velocity? What happens when you bring in all these sporting elements? Or what happens when this guy wants to dunk every day of the week for 6 months? How can we? So like you say, I think there's no such thing as what's the opposite word of a generalist?
Specialist,
sorry. Shout out specialist.
Shout out specialists everywhere, dude. Let's fucking go.
Big word. Big word. So, yeah, I don't think you could be a specialist without having levels of general knowledge.
Yeah. Or you should. Yeah.
That's it right there. Yeah. Hopefully that was good advice. I think
it was great. If I was that guy at that urinal, I would only be slightly disturbed. But also, I might just say thank you, man.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Okay. Matt, where can people find you? Where can they consume your information? And then also, anything on the horizon for you?
Yeah, so they can find me plusplyos.com or go to McInnes Watson on my Instagram. A few things. Seminar, Knoxville, Tennessee, with Rich.
Oh God, it's gonna be so fun.
Beginning of November.
Okay.
3rd of November. So grab a ticket. A few things. So I'm gonna delve a little bit down the inhibition. So I'm bringing together a program at the moment that teaches people how to. It's going to be like a learn to load or learn to land kind of program.
Hell yeah.
Learn to land. People don't like the phrase landing, so it might be load.
Yeah.
But giving people the keys to how do I break down the inhibition of yielding into deep movement or overcoming into stiff movement. So I'm in the midst of piecing that together. And I want to provide stuff for rehab specialists and stuff for performance specialists. Man. And then if you want to merge between both, then you do you.
Man, that sounds awesome.
You become the generalist. So,
man,
yeah, I think that I never realized how powerful some of my stuff would become in the rehab space. I thought it was always going to be heavily in the performance space.
Right.
And I didn't realize that a lot of rehab specialists have just not had the education of understanding what happens when dynamic elements come in. So at my seminars, bro, I mean, even here, there was quite a few physical therapists, chiropractors, and it's always the same. I'll always have quite an abundance of PTs at these events. So it says to me that there's a space for me to move into. And I think the inhibition side is big. But I also, on the inhibition side, I also want to play with, like, what does it take to go back to the Verkhoshansky stuff? The big depth jumping stuff.
Yeah.
Like, my mind also wants to go and play there a little bit, play with like those top levels of performance, but also provide people a scalable system to get there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. We are, had a fun couple of days here with you boys.
Yeah.
Nice to just come
You leave
down.
today?
I leave today.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Everyone, we got Matt Watson on his last day in Austin.
And I appreciate you guys. Like, this is the podcast, guys. It's going to be the thing. I give it 2 years and everyone will be like, Coach 'em up's where it's at.
Let's go.
People might think I'm a nerd for loving it, but I freaking love it. It's great.
Hey, listen,
it's great.
Shout out if only the nerds appreciate it, then shout out the nerds, baby. We appreciate you guys, everyone. If you made it this far, thank you for listening and watching. A lot of you are listening. Not everyone's subscribed. Please subscribe because it helps us out tremendously. Share this with a friend. Also, too, like if you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend and they leave their phone unattended, you trust them. You trust them, so you're not going to look in their text messages. But what you are going to do is you're going to pick up their phone and you're just going to subscribe them to the channel because it won't hurt them. In fact, it may even help them. They might learn about inhibition, and that would be good for your relationship. Guys, thank you for listening and watching. Matt, you're the fucking man.
Thank you, boys. Appreciate it.
I'm sure we'll have you back. So later, guys.
Peace.